Prime Minister Theresa May narrowly, it started after. Prime Minister Theresa May narrowly survived a vote of no confidence in Parliament on Wednesday, but that did little to quell the turmoil gripping the British government over her plan to leave the European Union, coming a day after she suffered a historic defeat on that proposal. The House of Commons voted 325 to 306 to reject the opposition motion of no confidence. A day earlier, it dealt Mrs. May a crushing defeat on her painstakingly negotiated agreement for Brexit, or the process of exiting the bloc. If you don't know what the person who's in here, Brexit was the vote for Britain to withdraw from the European Union, and they're having a whole back and forth about it. Had it been successful, the no confidence motion almost certainly would have ousted Mrs. May and probably have forced a general election, adding more layers of uncertainty in a country fast approaching the March 29th date for leaving the European Union, yet unable to agree on how to do so. The head-snapping sequence of events leaves Mrs. May the leader of an intractably divided party, with a split cabinet, no parliamentary majority, and no clear path forward on Brexit. Go to live chat. Put that over there. More politically wounded than ever, but somehow still standing. Ordinarily, a prime minister would be expected to resign after suffering a big defeat on a signature bill. The vote of 432 to 202 against Mrs. May's Brexit plan was by far the biggest loss for a government on a major issue in modern times. But Brexit has rewritten the rules of British politics. Once again, Mrs. May, the leader of the Conservative Party, who has defied many predictions of her political demise, lived to fight another day. More than 100 lawmakers from her party who have opposed her Brexit bill voted to support her government. So did legislators from the Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland, who also hated Mrs. May's plan. Her ability to soak up political punishment and survive is an acute frustration to Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the Labour Party. He began a no confidence motion by reminding lawmakers that Tuesday's vote was the largest defeat in history of our democracy, adding that Mrs. May was leading a zombie government. Man, I love question time. They can say whatever they want for the most part, no matter how rude or disrespectful a person who is there or not there. So someone that's observing it might think it is. And that's completely different from American politics. We just had a whole story with Rashida Tlaib, the new congresswoman from Michigan, saying, I'm going to impeach that, you know what? And everyone was losing their minds and their marbles were, falling apart. It's like, dude, they do that all the time, and people are saying it under their breath. And you're acting as if there's still a standard for the rhetoric that people can use when describing their disdain for another public figure. That's way over. So let's continue reading. Ian Blackford, the leader of the Scottish National Party's lawmakers at Westminster, accused the Prime Minister of presiding over a political collapse, adding that in the pursuit of Brexit, the country was on a path to self-destruction. Mrs. May's rejected proposal would have given Britain's government's power over immigration from Europe and would have kept the country in the bloc's trade system while a long-term agreement was negotiated. While the no-confidence motion, having failed, attention turned rapidly to whether Mrs. May has a credible plan B for Brexit. Next Monday, Mrs. May is required to return to Parliament with proposals on how she intends to proceed. Lawmakers then will have the opportunity to make new suggestions, and some might try to wrest control of the process. One possibility would be to call a second referendum on whether to leave the bloc. In the 2016 referendum, 52% of British voters, or 17.4 million people, voted to exit. Now that Mr. Corbyn has failed in his effort to secure a general election, he will be under pressure to endorse plans for a second referendum. A lifelong critic of the European Union, Mr. Corbyn has so far resisted such calls, but on Wednesday, 71 Labour lawmakers gave their support to the campaign for a so-called people's vote. On Wednesday, Mrs. May invited opposition leaders for talks, fueling speculation she will ultimately have to compromise with Labour Party lawmakers who want to keep a permanent customs union within the European bloc. This stop would likely cause even more dissonation within her own party. Also, she'll piss off more people who are part of the Conservative Party. That's her party for the person watching that might not know it. She also might try to postpone the March 29 deadline for Brexit. That date looms as analysts continue to warn that without a goal, the exit could be deeply damaging to Britain's economy, leaving ports gridlocked and causing some supply of food and medicine to dry up and even plunging Britain into a recession. Mr. Corbyn has called for Mrs. May to rule out the option of leaving the European Union without any agreement before he will hold talks with her. Last night, Mrs. May said she was disappointed in his position, but said her door was open. In a call with business leaders on Tuesday evening, the counselor of the Exequer, Philip Hammond, tried to reassure them that Britain could avoid a disorderly departure without any agreement and raised the possibility of an extension to the negotiating period under Article 50 of the European Union's treaty. I've not read the whole treaty, so I can't give you a summary of it. But I very rarely read an entire article, and I've done news events before, but this was really, really significant. This is one of those things where people, when they talk about big, major events that sometimes they ignored or didn't think about, whether you fall on one side of the aisle or not, you have to acknowledge surviving a no confidence vote right after getting your proposal smashed by a solid 50% of the members of your party in parliament, back to back. And it goes back to this thing where I was talking about how living in the twilight zone, because I can't imagine a world where I would have thought a political leader would have their proposal so handedly defeated by members of their own party. It'd be different if it was the Labour Party going around and saying, we're pissed off at this, because you expect them as your opposition to be the sole or primary people against you. But when your own team is saying, yeah, this is stupid, I don't get you come back and go, oh, I'm still going to stay in power, without feeling as if you're literally in a house divided, that if you can say it has any kind of unity at all, it's against your proposals. That's where their unity is drawing from. Now, I tried to watch the actual votes of the discussions earlier this morning, and I fell asleep while I was watching them. It was, I think, 5 a.m. over here, 11 over there. But it was a sight to see, because what you have are two parties, and this is a common occurrence. Both sides will say their ideas work, and then people from the other party will try to refute it. So, for example, you had Corbyn mention all these domestic programs that have been cut, austerity, and stuff that's kind of similar to what's happening in France with Macron right now. To such an extent that 70% of the protesters in that country actually are approved by the people, because everyone's kind of united in their disdain for the government over there. But, if you listen to Macron, he would tell you, oh, this is fine, this is okay. So just like when you listen to May, even though members of the Labour Party are saying, hey, this is kind of horrible, her policies in general, she'll try to defend them. And I made mention of how I'm not that familiar with British politics, but I do know that May is a supporter of the Saudi genocide in Yemen, and it was that particular policy that I tried to see her reason for supporting, and she had claimed that supposedly their involvement, or Britain's involvement, helped keep people out of the streets. And it's that kind of Twilight Zone rhetoric that I hear, where it's like, man, come on, this people cannot actually believe this. This can't be a person who was able to get voted into their position by a majority of individuals, because what they're saying makes no sense to me. And that's why when I go back to how, the person who's in charge will always try to make it seem as if the job they're doing is great. Even if you, as the observer, are going, what the hell is this? And I do encourage watching Question Time, because it's a rare example in politics, whether it's in a Western country or somewhere else, where you actually get to see leaders or people that are, in high profile positions, prime minister, leader of the opposition, and you can see them give their, plea for why their position works, and then see the other member of the other party basically slam and tear down everything they just said. and it's to their face. I can count two instances where people basically told her to resign during the confidence vote earlier today, and it was so funny because we talk about looking at these different people and not really knowing that much about them, but when you see one side make such a compelling argument and the only sense of recourse these people can get is just keep talking about, oh, we've done this, we've done that, we've done this, we've done that. It's just this never ending back and forth. So when I watched her get smashed yesterday with her proposal, I said, oh, this is the beginning of the end. She might be going down, but still somehow manages to stay in power. So it sucks. Um, because whether you dislike the deal that she has for getting out of the European Union, and I don't think I know enough about it to make an informed opinion. There's a lot of other horrible stuff that is going on over there that just like a good example would be whenever the US gets occupied with one political issue, it tends to cut away everything else to such an extent that if you criticize their focus on this one topic, people then try to demonize you as not caring enough about it. So for example, if you turn on Fox or if you look at the government shutdown right now, all people are doing is talking about immigration, immigration, immigration. Now, if I say it's dumb to only focus on that, people will say, you don't care about this issue, or you want to make sure that, my position is usurped because you want to draw attention to something else. I'll say no, but we're bombing 7 countries right now. We have a D plus rating in infrastructure. We have 30 million people without health insurance. So these are things that whether you want to get into who started, whose fault it is, they're happening and they're not being discussed. So when you watch Corbyn in the other question times where he talks about he quoted this one journalist who said that the period of 2000, I believe it was 2008, 2018, had been a lost decade over the wages that were going down and homelessness that was rising. And these are the kinds of things where you 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 want them to be discussed, but because there's this thing that is seen by a good chunk of politicians over there as the bigger issue, Brexit, it gets completely ignored. Just like I talk about how I believe it was 43% of the homeless have jobs. Some number that's it's basically 2/5 of all homeless people are working and then still don't have a place to stay. And that's another topic that the closest you'll ever get to a politician acknowledging it is if you confront them and they tell you some, one sentence crap that they're saying just so they can get away from you. It's one of those things where you go, whoa, look at this large number of people that are getting screwed over. And then no one says anything. How you doing, Daryl? I didn't even know you were there. It's because I'm like, oh, I wonder what people are checking this out, and I have to wait for them to comment to speak to them and then be familiarized with who I'm talking to. But the point is, we have all of these other issues that are going on in Britain, that are going on in the US, and they have this topic, the government shutdown over here, Brexit over there, and it just completely eviscerates all discussions of anything else. I don't know what you were saying, wow, to Daryl, so you can clarify. Again, that's not to confront you. It's just I want to make sure that my intended effect is at work, if you will. I've been a fan of Corbyn now for probably 3 years, and it was really, yeah, over 40% of all. Let me see if I can find an article, because when people say things in videos, I know that sometimes you hear it and you go, wow, that's crazy, but a lot of times you might say to yourself, well, how do I know that's true? So I think the number was 43%. Hold on. Of And I always tell people, if you don't believe me, you can Google it. And then they say that you're trying to, uh, I don't know, insult them. I said, no, we have this great internet that, worldwide, you can basically look up any of this stuff yourself and then find out the exact position. So it's sad. Okay, this is Huffington Post. I don't want to use them, but they have. Oh no, they're actually linking to somewhere else. So this is good. I need to start paying more attention to things. Yeah, well, that's kind of my thing, the real. I always say that, I can fully admit I have enough confidence to admit my ignorance. So, for example, I'm not a scientist and I don't know as much about climate change as I would want, but I like to believe that because I'm someone who knows there are people who are more sophisticated on this topic than I am. It's part of the reason why I believe the 97% of scientists who say human activity influences the environment, because I have enough I guess modesty about what degree I have of intelligence to know that there are people who have superior intellects when it comes to certain things. Okay, here it is. A 2014 survey of 187 cities by the NLCP. I'll read what you wrote right now. The NLCHP found that 24% of cities make it a citywide crime to beg in public. 33% make it illegal to stand around or loiter any place in city. Here it is. 43% make it illegal to keep. Oh my God, where is it? I'm gonna have to see if I can. There were plenty of. I might not have the exact number down, but it's somewhere in the 40s that part was there. This is crazy, man. I'm trying to fact check myself and I can't even get it. I used to when I posted on Twitter, one of the things I would do is I would have a Google Doc where it had all the little different sources for the statistics I would mention, so that if someone said I don't believe you, I could then pull it out and just be like, here you go. Like there was one time this guy said, I don't believe. It was during the Kavanaugh thing. He said, I don't believe this person. Someone else said that a majority of people in the U.S. support abortion rights, and he was like, I don't believe that. It was like over 60%. Then I sent him an article where they did the poll and it proved that. It's like, did you like? That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Where when I see something written on social media, um, that's a statistic or is trying to present a fact or some number that is claimed by the person, I'm going to look it up. But it just seems like people are getting lazy to a point that's not even comical. I may have found something. Yeah, you look it up. I might have to send it to you, or rather, only that's weird. I hate it when YouTube has that little automated thing where they hide messages. So the one you posted, the Washington Post article, was I'm going to click and read on this on my phone. Um, it was held back, and I only saw it because I'm on the what you call a computer version of YouTube Live, if you can call it that. But it does this thing where it'll automatically hold back certain messages. So I've had people swear, and then it's like, oh, we tagged this because it might not be appropriate. I'm like, man, I don't care. But I don't want you to think that I'm trying to suppress your position or opinion or whatnot. So let me click it. Okay, instead of sending me the link. Yeah, YouTube and their automated stuff are very finicky, unfortunately. And that's part of the reason that a lot of people are wishing that it wasn't the monopoly. So there was actually a website to compete with YouTube. And every time you have, I'm going to item 3, but every time you have people, ooh, even bigger. Wow, a 2002 national study, 45% of worked in the past 30 days. I'm going to see if I can find the article I had seen before that, because there's another one. But thank you for putting that in there. Let me say hello to Envoy, who disappeared like Jimmy Hoffa, former Teamsters leader, who people surprisingly are not familiar with. Even if you don't, you're not some big labor buff or any of that stuff. There's this internet culture, this group of people who are really into crimes and disappearances and whatnot. That's one of my, so I guess, catchphrases. I'm trying to discuss this major geopolitical event that people in the U.S. are not going to pay that much attention to, because we're so obsessed with this shutdown and Trump and 2 or 3 other things. I always, I rag on the media because it seems like the only times you ever get them to discuss any of these seemingly major topics is when something happens that's not even uh, in the realm of just being a normal kind of bill or day or anything. Yeah, the shutdown's a big deal, the real. I'm not disputing that, but it seems like all they do is talk about that and then just leave everything else pushed out. The politically Gillett ad. No, I heard about it. I'll have to look it up. I have to go and check it out to see what people are discussing to such a high extent. But yeah, I wish Corbyn had had his way and we'd been able to get a second election because it's hard pressed for me to believe that the um, the Labor Party, and then the Conservative Party are not going to have some major switch if they do an election right now. What May is hoping it happens is that she gets to stick around for another 2-3 years, and then by that time people forget. It's kind of like how when we had I don't know if you remember the government shutdown from 2013, the real, but that was blamed primarily on Republicans. So one would think going into the midterms of 2014, they're going to lose seats, and the Democrats are going to get even bigger majorities in the Senate, blah 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 blah, and then they get smashed. And the Republicans have had their Senate majority ever since. But you see, within a year of time, people just, whether they forgot or they didn't care enough to let that factor into how they voted, it's going to be the same thing with this shutdown. People are saying, "Oh, this dooms Trump. We're going to get him." Ha ha ha. Like, no, his supporters are going to keep pushing for him. Just like with May, she sits here and she has all these people, and I guess what I oftentimes get from Question Time, erroneously, if I'm pronouncing that word correctly, is that there's such a large coalition of people that are sick of her. And I don't know that to be the case. I know that there's a large chunk of members of the parliament that are pissed off over that Brexit deal, but actually getting the population to say, yeah, our prime minister sucks, whole other matter. An envoy disappeared again. Came back, gave us 4 comments, and bid farewell. And then he came back after there was a public outcry. God, I just Theresa May is like she, who she's starting to remind me of. So remember when we had the midterm and how all the centrist Democrats like Joe Donnelly and Heidi Heitkamp and what was the other one, Claire McCaskill, all got smashed, but then Joe Manchin was able to stick around, even though he pissed everybody off because he voted for Kavanaugh and voted for like most of Trump's nominees, and he's supposed to be a member of the opposition party. And I remember I was watching one of Kyle Kalinski's videos, and he said he was a magician. That's what Theresa May is. She gets her main thing, this Brexit deal, smashed, and then just barely wedges out a no confidence vote. That's who she reminds me of. Or that's what that reminds me of. And the fact that they're months apart too is why that's it's contemporary to have someone piss people off over and over and over again, and then they just still stick around. That's the comparison I'm going to choose to make. No, but I think if the Labor Party took over and Corbyn became prime minister, we wouldn't have the involvement of Britain in these various offensive wars. That's why I really hate um, these kind of events, because people will just read the headline. They don't think, what does that mean for the future of the country? And we're not just talking about Brexit. We're talking about its policies worldwide, how it interacts with other places. That could be, yeah. No, I think they did a study where they said that if Trump were to back away from the wall, his supporters would still back him or something, because they, they would see him as having tried. So he can really pretty much do whatever he wants and keep their support. Whatever his position is, they'll adapt to it. Hell, he could come out tomorrow for blanket amnesty, and they go, "Yeah, we need to." They built the economy. Oh, Envoy, you didn't see the video with the wall where the guy did the GoFundMe, and I said, I think it was 3 weeks ago, this is probably a scam, and he's gonna pocket the money, and then he announced that he's gonna transfer it into some little stupid group. He's starting with what's that guy's name? Tickle Me Voter Fraud, Chris Kobach, and some other people. You didn't hear about that, Envoy? That was so funny. And I felt so bad for those people because they genuinely believe in that proposal and then they get screwed. But I feel like most people were able to figure out what I was saying. I mean, if let's pretend today I come out and I say, this is the Bernie 2020 channel. Donate to my GoFundMe and I'll give my money to Bernie. And then you donate. Uh, and then I'm like, oh, we just raised 20 million for Bernie's campaign. And I'm not a member of his team. I have no connection to him whatsoever. And then 3 weeks later, I go, thank you for the 20 million. We'll be transferring a third of it into my new group, starring me and other shady people like Bob Menendez from New Jersey and Pelosi's crooked behinds. I've been trying to keep away from politics. Oh, the real says I don't feel bad for them. Hell no. Well, like I said, I don't agree with that policy, but I don't like the idea that you're going to have someone actually be able to get away with pretending they were going to give this money to the government and then put it in their own crap. It's just like with Alex Jones. I don't feel bad about about him suffering, I guess, a backtrack in his career because of what he said about the Sandy Hook, stuff. But I don't like the idea of YouTube being able to just say, I don't like that person, goodbye, and all these other websites. I mean, think about it, Envoy, or The Real. What would this site be like if people could be gotten rid of by nameless, faceless individuals and Henry Kissinger? It would be chaos. Deserves to be arrested. I guess. No, the nameless people and Henry Kissinger in secret. Explain what to you, The Real? That that YouTube is decided, or rather decides, who can stay and who can go by unaccountable, nameless individuals. Yeah. Well, that's so when they had a discussion of this on TYT, they were talking about how these warmongers can basically get rid of you because they can say, like if you oppose a war, which is not financially convenient to them, they can say, like, oh, you're sowing discord and then yank you off. Just like if, let's say, the British government, run by May, who's involved in these offensive conflicts, got a hold of YouTube, right? Just in this hypothetical. And I say, I want Corbyn to be the next prime minister because he's opposed to this conflict, that war, this war, that war. Her government could say, oh, you're sowing discord, and then gone. So that's what I'm talking about. I don't know how familiarized you are with the media supporting conflicts and wars until the last dog dies, but The Real, you should have. I think you remember the when Trump announced he was pulling out of Syria, and all the Republicans everywhere were losing their minds and going. That was so funny just seeing them melt over him getting out. Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. Where if YouTube is run like that or run by the same people who congregate with those individuals and they have no direct stated rules and regulations, like, oh, you cannot talk about this, which that would be censorship, but it still would tell you what the ramifications are, what exactly you have to do to make sure you don't get thrown off. that's what we're setting ourselves up for, because things are not explicitly stated. I mean, the Alex Jones thing was crazy. Just day after day, he's off of Twitter, he's off of YouTube, he's off of this place, off of that place. So it was. I'm saying that if a government that is in bed with the corporations that are affiliated with these companies running these websites get a hold of the influence and power over these places, so many people are going bye bye. It's not even going to be funny. Haha, you just brought it up. Yeah, that's what I was referring to, Envoy. So just like with Brexit, if I came on here and I said, you know what, we need to stay in the European Union, and that position is not supported by. I don't know what the U.S.'s position is. I think it was to stay in there, but let's say the U.S. government, you know, says, hey, people who are in charge of YouTube, get rid of that person. I'm gone. And it's really sad because I look at, YouTube as this place that has problems, but it still is a good place to go for individuals that don't want to be part of the corporate mainstream of discussions and topics. I'm openly admitting to you that I don't know a lot of this stuff about this no confidence vote because I have an interest in learning more about it, and I'm not going to pretend I'm knowledgeable about something I'm not. This whole movement for political consent is just planting the seeds for more mass government control in the future. The signs will shape a new world order, if you ask me. I got a tinfoil hat on, but I do think this is where we're heading. Yeah, well, thank the Telecommunications Act, signed by Clinton in '96. Another Clinton legacy, where all these companies were able to merge together, and you even had Rupert Murdoch admit that he tried to support Bush's Iraq War through Fox News and all of his other newspapers that he owned. So it's not hard to really see why this stuff is as problematic as it has become, when a few people control all of the outlets of being able to speak and discuss things. Look at what the New York Times is doing to Sanders right now with the sexual harassment crap. All that stuff is coordinated. It's like, hey, this person ran a campaign where people touched me. That's why I waited 3 years. I need to go someplace where I need to learn about things that mainstream is not talking about. I am burned out on the fact that no one impeached. No one impeached what? Who? May or Trump or who? Okay. No. I oftentimes try to discuss things I think aren't discussed enough or talked about that often on here. And a lot of times you get a title that people will later see and go, I can't believe you stopped talking about the topic. I'm like, man, you weren't watching that anyway. Go away. It was funny the first 2 years Trump was in office and them talking about impeachment, and then like just me being aware of the way that U.S. politics works, where basically you have a position, and then if the position is not met or otherwise opposed by someone in your own party, you pretend like you never had that position. Just like if you go and look at the Vice President Pence, he used to talk about, oh, we cannot have presidents that would cheat on their wives, and it would be so gross, and bleh, during Clinton's era. But as Trump's VP, a man who, like him, I don't think this matters as far as getting rid of someone, but that's just my opinion, has cheated on all three of his wives. Shh. Be very, very quiet. Yeah. Hypocrites. And these are the people who amass support. That's going to be the next president, according to all of their supporters. Even though I do think that if he were to run on his own, so let's say Trump gets 2 terms or Trump only has 1 term and Pence gets thrown out as well, and he tries to run for I think he would get destroyed. So this is why I stopped watching news. Stop watching CNN. I love it when like Republicans are on here and they'll just lose their minds because they can't believe that I would say that. They think that's an actual liberal network. Oh my God. But yeah, this was a significant vote that is very consequential. It would have been more if she had actually been ousted from office. No, I would say free speech TV is pretty liberal. Um, they have a couple of people on there that do like I feel bootlicking for the Democrats, and that's kind of where I'm not that interested in doing that. But they have people on there who actually are progressive. I feel tired watching news, Fox, CNN, TYT, all the same to me on YouTube. It's just ridiculous. Well, then fine, don't watch me. Go away. Imagine you just it's like I was just expressing my opinion. No, go away. I used to think TYT was liberal years and years ago. Boy, was I wrong. Yeah, they're the only one of those news hosts that one of those groups where they have like legions of people just dedicated to saying how horrible they are. And it's really funny because I always chalk it up to there being so many different hosts and panelists that come on there that there's always going to be someone you don't like. Like I have one host in particular. I'm not going to say who she is, but she's not Anna. Who anytime she comes on there, I will literally turn it off. That's how much she annoys me. Hey, Envoy, don't forget, Anna's better than you, much better, as she put it. If you ever saw that video, man, that was hilarious. Yeah, it's a feminist world, and you're not in it. Oh, Envoy, did you see the video about the 30-year low for birth rates or whatever? Where birth rates met a 30-year low in the only two states where they're actually meeting the supply and demand are like South Dakota and New Mexico out of all of them. Did you like it? Did you laugh? Did you go, I wonder why that is. Oh yeah, the real. I had a big spike in viewership when I was talking about the uh, the chick stuff, and it was funny because I got to a point where I just became so tired of. Did they break it down? Um, they do have a section in that. Yeah, I was about to say wars over. I'm gonna have his baby. No, I'm gonna have his baby. No, I'm gonna have his baby. That's the war they're gonna have. No, but in the comment section, or rather in the description, I left a link to the article, so you can they do have a breakdown of a couple of ethnic groups. Is it because the yeah? Well, Envoy, I told you what it is that guys basically say, you know what? I'm not going to get my way all the time, but I have people that I like that are going to appeal to me to an extent, and then they keep like doing this with their confidence and or rather how much of their criteria you have to meet, like I did, and then they still get turned down by people who they're having to compromise and accept everything of, but then the other person loses their mind because of the it's yeah man, I editing that thing was whew, I was so tired after that because I had to get all these screenshots, which I told you I was going to do back in July or June, and then cut out people's names, cut out all their stuff. Then record my own audio. I think I sat in front of that camera for like 2 hours, just you know, speaking and then reading the stuff and all that. That's why in a lot of instances, even though the screenshot is on there, it kind of sounds like I'm, mumbling. I'm like, this is said by that because I was reading it and then also having to bend over like that and all that. Push to be independent. There's no need. Courts. Oh, yeah. Well, they have a thing where they said that that we call it women are more likely to want people that or want men that supposedly um, when you aren't sure you're going to get paid, or if you do get paid, it's like 20 cents or something. That's why I never believed in doing a Patreon because I always think rather that if I put something on there that I spend, let's say, a week or two working on and no one sees it, you know, I'm going to be kind of annoyed. Just like with the what do you call it? There was one person said they were dedicated. It's like, yeah, but you're just one person, and we're talking about needing multiple people to do that to actually be serious about the idea of it. Just like with the views. When I more often than not put out a random video about the news, it barely can crack what 20, 30 views. But if it's something about women, oh, here they come, it's always 100 or 90 or what the other big number. That numbers that if they were repeated more often than not, I would be more confident about the chances of actually doing this seriously. But instead we're stuck with the system that we have now. And the only reason I was, so serious about editing that was because I put it off month after month, and I wanted to ensure that I finally did this. I did all my reasons and showed the proof and all that. Oh, but the point I was trying to make earlier, Envoy, was that when you have people who, I really wish, part of me kind of still wishes I talked about this stuff in regular videos. You have women who are known to not want men that make less than them, but then women graduate from college more often than men, which means there's only two things that have to happen. Either the men are going to have to go to school at more rates than the women, which is not going to happen, or the women are going to have to lower their standards, which is not going to happen. So we're just going to be in this downward spiral for the next couple of decades and years. And I'm telling you, when I was talking to, you remember me mentioning the used car saleswoman Envoy, I said to her, I could come back in 8 years after, let's say, getting out of college, or I don't know, having some position, whatever. And I'm not going to want any of the women that come to me, if they do, because I'm going to think, when I was coming up, you treated me like trash. Hell, I told my best friend, the one you heard back in, what was it, June, July, that he's much more likely to get financially compensated out of me than anybody that's not related to me, because he was there by entire side. Last year. It shuts it in terms of certain. Why would you want to go? Go there for an education. Don't go there for any of them. No, remember, it's all homogenized. Everyone has to do the exact same thing, look the same way, act the same way. Well, look, here's the thing, Envoy. People have children they can't afford all the time. The difference is that in a lot of instances, they're with a partner that, at the very least, shows some kind of interest at first at trying to be with them in doing this. Just like with me, when I was talking to all these different people, I said, "Look, I'll, submit to whatever you want, provided that you also submit to what I'm trying to do as well." And they couldn't get them to compromise because it's my way or the highway. That you get told that you have to make sacrifices, you can't get everything you want. Tell that to them. I mean, with them, it's like, put your hat on and get out of here. I wish I actually did have a little prop hat I could put on and I get out of my seat and then leave the camera just facing my chair. Oh yeah, that's again the feminist culture. It is not surprising. What's funny, Daryl? I don't know. I don't. Again, just clarity. Also, the other part of this that's really kind of amusing is that I did a video about. Oh, Daryl, that's actually the reference is that when McCarthy, so the Senate, the House Minority Leader for the Republicans, and then Steny Hoyer, the House Majority Leader, were talking to each other on the House floor last month, and I'm gonna see if I can find this clip for you. McCarthy said something about attempts by Republicans at bipartisanship, and then Steny Hoyer was like, "There ain't been no attempts. It's been you don't like it? Put your hat on and get out of here." I just started laughing. Like, who the hell would say that to his face? Oh my god! Like just the little hand motions too. Oh, that was. I just knew I had to reference. I don't even like Steny Hoyer, and that was funny. That is establishment Democrat. That's the original establishment Democrat. That's why he's been there for almost 40 years. He wrote the book on neoliberalism. Oh, but going back to what I was saying, I did a video on. I don't know if you remember where we were talking about, or I was talking about I like older chicks or something, and I had a person who basically said either partner could die when they get older, and I realized I forgot to mention one thing, which was that when me and my best friend were talking, I said to him, you're oftentimes going to speak to some woman that's, let's say, a year or two younger than you, or someone that's still, I don't know, maybe just out of high school, and you're going to think that person wants something from you. But let's say, because he's like, what, 20, I think? Yeah, 20. So let's say some 22, 23-year-old woman that's a college graduate starts talking to him and then, says she's interested because she thinks he's smart, thinks he's going somewhere, thinks that he has a, good drive or whatever. He's not going to think that person wants something out of him because they're, ahead of him in terms of their achievement, in the academic realm, and also they're trying to do something themselves. So that was the point I was also trying to make, that if the person is, some argue, have it harder, and yeah, I don't know who's even saying that. Again, Envoy, Twilight Zone. So everything is backwards. That's why we have a government that bombs babies in the Middle East and then has the same politicians supporting that policy talking about, I'm pro-life because unborn lives matter, not the ones on Earth. See, that was the first policy I read of Theresa May where I just like, that's like an insta switch, just me thinking you're a scumbag. So I was just hoping she would lose, man. It didn't happen. Let's see. You guys have anything else to say before we get out of here? Yeah, and no one cares. But like I said in the I don't you weren't there for that, I don't believe, the Thomas Massey stream. It's kind of toward the end, this Republican congressman that I disagree with on almost every social issue, but he's uh against all these offensive wars. When people run for the House, the Senate, president, whatever, more often than not, they gas you up with social issues because they know that's what you're going to think. Oh, me. So that when they get in office, they can go and bomb and kill all these other people. And you had no way of knowing this because they barely talked about, if at all, what their foreign policy was. And I brought up the new senator from Tennessee, Blackburn, who is an example of how someone can run as being pro-life and all this other conservative stuff, but then they get in office and she's going to vote for every single offensive war that kills thousands of people that Trump tries to do. And if Trump decided tomorrow, just to show you how much of an empty suit she is, if Trump decided tomorrow to not bomb anywhere, she would either oppose it because of defense contractor coins or support it because she has no ideology. She's just trying to go along with the flow. She is uh, trying to jockey for the highest position, and she figures I can do that by bootlicking the guy who is in that job currently. Well, no one cares because America doesn't care when they bomb each other's countries. That's cool. That's America. But if America gets bombed, oh, their God, World War III. Yeah, U.S. is filled with a lot of people who just don't have empathy and critical thinking skills. I don't know what your opinion is on Ocasio-Cortez, Envoy, but when she was at the climate change panel with Bernie um, last month, she said that if a foreign power came into the U.S. and made our water the way it is in Flint and gave us a D+ in infrastructure and had 70, no, she didn't say that one, but those two in particular, we'd be ready to go to war. That it's okay for us to cripple ourselves, but if anyone else does it, oh, it's time to fight. Arr. So she made a really good point, in my opinion. Yeah, Flint, Michigan, just completely ignored. I was like, how the hell is that even possible? Jesus, again, Twilight Zone. Oh yeah, I know the movies that we have the backwards mentality of all these people. It can happen like that because they don't see their own people as fellow citizens. Yeah, they don't care. Not one bit. And as long as it's not happening to them, I know that if Barron lived in Flint, Barron Trump, his daddy would want to go over there and fix the water. I know that if Ivanka was, possibly in the way of, what was it, Hurricane Irma or Maria or any of the other ones, he'd want to go over there and make sure they had disaster relief and prevented it from happening in the first place. Or hell, if Eric, his second son, I believe, was in Yemen getting starved to death by Saudi Arabia, he would lose his mind. But because it's not them, just like, look at Cheney. He was opposed to gay marriage until he found out his daughter was gay. And then there's like a whole story about how he basically threw her over the cliff, metaphorically, of course, just to go and surround himself with, which one is it that's in Congress? Liz, I believe. The one that's the conference chair. So, that is not even, it's just a running theme of people not caring until it affects them. Muslims in the Middle East, like North Koreans, the Russians, always a villain. Don't forget Palestine, man. Look what CNN did to Mark Lamont Hill. They fired him for saying we need to have a fair process between these two foreign countries. They lost their minds. Anti-Semitic, bleh. And then I swear, when I go on Twitter and I see these people talking about I stand with Israel, it's like, what the hell are you standing with? A Flint water punishment? Yeah. All these states are just run by people who, in a lot of instances, don't seem to really care about anything but themselves. Yeah, they got rid of him in 2 seconds. I'm telling you, Israel and Saudi Arabia, man, those are the two countries that can do whatever they want, and the U.S. will bootlick for eternity. Yeah, goes deep. But yeah, we're coming to the conclusion of our thing. I actually went longer than I thought I was going to. We talked about Theresa May and her, being able to just waddle out of that process. Oh yeah, Envoy. I hope you're familiar with the BDS bill, the boycott, divestment, sanctions, where basically the Senate and I guess Congress in general are trying to censor freedom of speech because they're saying if you boycott Israel for causing all of these Palestinians to die and have all kind of humanitarian abuses, we're going to boycott you in return. So you can't have an opinion on this other than support them and do business with them. That's your American Congress that talks about democracy and being able to, speak out against leaders. Man, I recommend looking into it. The real, it is a sight to see. Yeah. So, thank you for watching. I might stream tomorrow, maybe. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Have a good day.